Hello, hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into the Odd Thoughts Podcast. At the Odd Thoughts Podcast, we like to talk about the everyday odd thoughts, have conversations on relatable topics, and discuss whatever comes to mind. My name is Gunther, and I am your host. Welcome to episode 39. For episode 39, I wanted to start off by talking about prioritizing yourself, kind of what it means to put yourself first and make sure that you get your own priorities met. Then I wanted to transition into having fun a little bit with talking about some of my favorite like childhood songs, kind of putting together my like childhood playlist, at least one iteration of that. Next, I wanted to discuss a little bit about this article that I read. It was an article that was kind of talking about like the development of like primitive language and how some of the change in like landscape and climate may have led to that. Then I ended it on talking about just New Year's resolution, just kind of reminiscent on the end of the year and kind of what I have for the goals of coming into 2024. So, if you want to listen to any of that, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Stay tuned in and enjoy. Please enjoy. How's everybody doing though? I hope everybody's doing okay. We're getting it's the day that this podcast will be up is the 31st. It's today. And I hope that everybody's last day is good, and I hope everybody's first day of 2024 is better. And I hope the whole year for you guys is amazing. It can be difficult sometimes to be ourselves. It's not always prevalent to most people on what makes them themselves, I think. We all have certain self-doubts and we question who we are. There may be even a guilt we feel about ourselves when we don't feel deserving of things, right? We don't feel good about ourselves, so that keeps us from letting ourselves be free. It can be uncomfortable to face things and we don't like about ourselves. It isn't easy to work through the lack of self-compassion we might have. As we may all share a slight collective struggle and self-doubts, it should show that through imperfections you might find maybe your real self. People's certain qualities may not make them a bad person, right? But it keeps them maybe from feeling like a real person. So we might as well love the things that make up ourselves, all good and bad, and work through the mindset of embarrassment about ourselves. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Sorry. Everyone is dealing with their own lives, so let your true self live. Don't ever hold back and just let things be how they are. Like I said, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. I love that. I think I heard that quote somewhere. Sometimes the quote I hear like a quote, and that's my sentiment. I like to try to spread. I try to go off of that. Sometimes I don't know where I hear some of them, but I like I said, I hope y'all are doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'm excited for 2024. I mean, it's just it's another year, but I feel like this can be good for all of us. I think I'm trying to have the mindset that it's gonna be good for me, and not saying this is the one year that's gonna be good, right? I'm hoping for future good years, but I know that if I stick my head down and I get things done and I really try to enact the things that I want and really try to like do it, everything will kind of fall into place for me. And I hope that y'all do the same way. Enact the things that you want, all these goals you have, just let things kind of play out and let nature take over. Um, I'm kind of I'm gonna take a couple weeks off at the beginning of January, and I'm gonna try to get ahead on recording some podcasts and try to even develop more of like different topics. I think I've been talking a lot about this in like previous intros, but um, I'm just kind of throwing out. I have like the mental health stuff and like that kind of like more of the relatable kind of conversations. Like when I talk about like in this episode prioritizing yourself, I have a lot of those kind of figured out already. I've kind of gotten around to like I just put like all of those on like a big list, and then I've just kind of like done my research and I'm like pointing them out and picking them out and stuff yada yada yada. But I think one of the things I'm kind of having struggles with is that when I'm then putting together like an outline, like kind of what the other thing is. Like I usually try to have like one relatable kind of mental health or like having maybe two of those and then have a couple like fun random kind of topics. That's kind of like what I like to do in each episode. You know, so I've been having a little struggle with a little bit of the fun random side of things. There's so many things I think I would like to talk about, right? But I don't. I mean, I can't just be like favorite movies and favorite video games all the time. So I get a little stuck with that. I kind of have the idea that I want to play maybe some games. Obviously, there's certain games that you would need to see, but like certain word games or I do like the 6 degrees of separation. Drawing the two actors' names and connecting them through 6 movies. That's a fun game, and I want to play that more. But that's just one. But I was thinking about like, you know, uh, um, I used to watch the Jenna Julian podcast, Jenna Marbles, Julian Salmita. But they used to do like the fake products, that's like snake oil salesman, the Shark Tank thing, and I thought that was awesome. I think that's kind of fun. So maybe thinking about maybe trying to do like that, do making up like just like good or bad like fake products and just trying to sell them to y'all. Just have fun with that. I think that'd be kind of fun. But like it's just certain word games or certain things that like games are a little tough because there's going to be maybe some pauses in between, and I don't want to be too paused when I'm talking because that's just going to sound a little boring. And if you don't see me on camera, then you're not as engaged. You got to listen to feel. When you're listening, you got to feel like I'm talking to feel engaged. But I'm then thinking about like well, I can do a little bit like I like doing research, so start highlighting maybe certain like historical figures, lesser known historical figures. I'm really trying to stay away from true crime stuff because I feel like that's like everywhere. But I mean, some conspiracy theories, like, or like, I thought would be kind of fun, like talking about some lost treasures, like that'd be kind of fun. Just like lost things in society and like the world. And I think that'd be kind of cool. Or do more of the year flashback things. Like I don't know if that's like that. I haven't done one in a while because it took up like a whole episode. So, but I think about doing it for like if I could minimize it to like a 20-minute topic, then that's perfect. That would be kind of a good topic or a good thing to do. But I'm just having a little struggle with the fun topics, the fun random topics. But I think the harder thing is coming up with the research for the mental health stuff because I want to be able to talk thoroughly about that and like the relatable topics. So when I get more of those done and I kind of throw them into certain episodes, then I can kind of just like I start just do this, do that, and also just coming up with fun things to talk about and just having a good list of that. But I'm working on that. Like I said, I'm gonna take a little time to try to get ahead. I know y'all are bear with me. I appreciate it, and maybe even like before that, I can try to like put myself out there on social media to like engage a little more. I'm on like Instagram. I'm trying to follow more random people, not like random, but like people who are as well trying to be these content creators. Who have like a couple thousand followings. Trying to do I'm networking without actually talking to people. Leave me alone. But yeah, enough of myself. Let's hop into episode 39. In our day-to-day existence, we can get kind of caught up in just focusing on basic survival. A lot of things pop up in our lives and handling them all can be kind of difficult. In all the chaos and through all the adversities, we forget about ourselves a little bit sometimes. Pile on having people in your life that need you and prioritizing yourself can be kind of impossible. We have to remember to put our own wants and needs and priorities first. And we may feel guilty about that sometimes and it's not always easy knowing what to prioritize first. Sorry. But when we are empty in the way of like not fulfilling those needs, we become less than who we are, like less than a complete person. And it may affect how we interact with others and how we kind of handle our everyday situation. Humans are destined to grow. Humans are destined to push against adversity. So it's very important to prioritize yourself a lot. And it's okay to put other people first, but you have to remember to, kind of put your own wants and needs first. Help yourself out first. Like I said, it's kind of hard sometimes, and like when you're just trying to make it through each day, you're showing up for a job, you're trying to handle your everyday to day errands or whatever. It's kind of hard to make time for yourself. And like I said, just in all that like what you want and need and all these like smaller priorities, usually starting with like what you need in life, right? And then kind of just expanding from that. You know, it doesn't always have to be like I think all of us have maybe an idea of things we want and things we need to do in our lives, certain priorities, like I say. But what's important over the other thing, right? What makes something more important than the others? And like how do I know like this is what's best for me at the moment? Can I wait a little longer on that? But waiting is kind of like not doing it at all. Waiting is just gonna is perpetuating the not prioritizing yourself. But like it's important to make time for yourself. And it's very hard in a day-to-day existence. You kind of lose yourself in that like must do mentality, that kind of must survive mentality. It's just like I said, you're just trying to get through the next day. You're hoping that like, you wake up at a good time so you don't miss your job, and you hope you do a good enough job at your job. So like you're just kind of thinking about that and then what you're going to eat for dinner and paying your bills and like when you have people in your life like kids or a spouse or something like that. Like I said, you're just trying to have that must survive mentality sometimes. And that could be kind of hard. Also kind of that guilt of putting yourself first maybe. I know that sometimes like I feel a little guilty thinking about myself first in certain situations. Sometimes I think there's like a subconsciousness a little bit to putting yourself first, but sometimes I feel a little guilty. I can't help that. But there's an importance to putting oneself first. It's not a selfish thing, especially when you've been forgetting about yourself and you're not prioritizing things and not figuring out the things you want and need or doing something about those things. I find a lot of times I also have like a critical inner voice. I think a lot of people kind of have that maybe like you think that the things that you want and need aren't necessarily that important, which I don't think that's a good way to think at all. I think that's just not doing yourself justice, and or just thinking that maybe it's just not important, and that comparing it to people around you in your life or in like the close adjacentness of your life that you're kind of like, well, why am I stressing about these things? Why do I need these things when other people don't have them or whatever? It's just a critical way to think, kind of like a lack of self-compassion, right? Maybe yeah, just not understanding your own adversities. That could be a tough thing. Maybe like I said, you're kind of like in that everyday to day existence. You're not really realizing that you're not taking care of everything, and it may not bite you right off the bat. It may not come to fruition, right off the bat, but it eventually pops up, especially like when a lot of those needs and a lot of those wants in a way of that deprives you of feeling fulfilled and being complete as a person. It's just kind of it'll show itself. And so I think a little bit of that lack of like maybe a little bit of lack of awareness sometimes of knowing what you need. And just like, yeah, like a little bit of that lack of self-compassion, I guess I can't say that. And there's never, I think, sometimes really clear thing to sometimes, especially when you have a lot of things, you don't really know what to put first. That's a prioritizing yourself, and then is important, but then prioritizing the little things about yourself. That can be a bigger question. That can be a whole nother thing. So, like, that question of what to put first, you kind of maybe get a little caught up in that chaoticness of you got all these things you want to do, and you really have no perfect thing to put first. There's nothing that really truly means something. You know what I'm saying? And I quite often like you kind of realize that when what gets in the way of prioritizing yourself is there's so many factors just besides like inside that day-to-day existence, right? I think when you're kind of helping other people out and you prioritize other people or whatever, you realize that you're kind of just giving too much of yourself at times. You want to be a empathetic person and you don't want to be a selfish person, you want to be a selfless person, but sometimes you kind of start to give yourself too much. You're kind of thinking about other people too much. And like I said, it's not a bad thing to think about other people. 100% not. You should. But like, if you eventually, when you are kind of empty in the way that you kind of given everything to this one person, you've given all these emotions, you've given your time, and in a way, you can then kind of feel depleted. And when you're depleted, then you have like nothing to give. Not meaning that you're like a useless person, but you just don't have that energy and that ability to kind of keep up with that pace of helping others out. I in one of my previous episodes, I kind of talked about that. Got into like kindness or something like that, and you know, giving your energy when you can, type thing. That's important to think that you should help out when you can. You just got to understand that when your needs aren't met, your emptiness can just affect others at times, and especially affect you, obviously. But it can affect others. It can definitely 100% make you less of a whole person. And then, like I said, when you're empty, you feel that you're depleted. You have nothing to give. You have no energy, and it maybe you just feel like you, even in your own head, thinking that like you don't have anything to give. You can't even take care of your own self. You can't take care of your own stuff. So what makes you think that you can take care of other people? Which is not true necessarily. Just sometimes you're drained. Sometimes you're a little depleted. It's just so important, I think, when you're prioritizing yourself that you need to realize that we need to take care of ourselves 100%. There's this constant growth as a human, right? That we need to do. And when you kind of have these unwanted or, unmet wants and needs, you're kind of stale, stalled. You're stuck in one place. And it doesn't mean you're not a good person, and it doesn't mean you're not capable of becoming a better this or growing as a human. It's just harder to do. It's just like you get too many, unanswered questions. And you don't want that. I don't want that. So it's priorities don't stop. Needs and wants are always going to be there. You're always going to want more things, and you're always going to need to do things to take care of yourself in life and put yourself in a certain position. So they don't stop. You can ignore them for so long, but it's not gonna work out in the long run. So taking steps to prioritize yourself, maybe you've never done it before, and I'm someone that like I think sometimes it's hard because I just don't want to let someone down. So I kind of have this thing in my head where like if I don't want to give some I can't if I can't give 100% of myself, or if I don't feel super capable of even doing it for myself, then I can't do it for other people. But then, like, I'm sitting here, I'm not even doing anything for myself, so I'm not really prioritizing anything. But when you're taking steps to prioritize yourself, I think one thing to maybe start with is, you kind of have to say no to others. You got to kind of have say no to the everyday to day existence on things and giving yourself to things that don't necessarily need your energy. Obviously, you're still gonna have to do a job and take care of your kids and do stuff for your significant other and stuff like that, but there's maybe certain steps that you can take, to say, or, you can say no to other things, and you can say no sometimes, and take that moment for yourself and make sure that when you need to do something and it's really like specific, do it, take control of that moment. Sometimes I guess I said control, and then the next thing I wrote down is let go of needed control. Sometimes I think like it's more so like the picture of perfection where you kind of think that you want this need or you want to take care of this one thing specific way. But as you know that things just kind of happen and it's never a perfect time really, I think, to take care of yourself. When it comes, it feels like when you hit rock bottom, it's like a perfect time, but if you're not always going to reach a rock bottom necessarily. So letting go of that needed control, letting go of the kind of expectation of that you're going to be able to handle everything, you're going to navigate every single little aspect of this certain thing. Getting expectations, I think that's like kind of a good thing to say. Excuse me. Just forgetting that, this is how it should look, this is how I should be, this is how it should be. I hold on to a lot of things thinking that this is when I should do something. This is how it looks. And especially when you've never done something before and you kind of look on to other people on how they do it, or someone tells you how to do something, it just kind of like it puts all that stuff in your head, and you got to remember to kind of just like let things sometimes be. Overall it's just kind of a changing of your mindset. You got to embrace kind of some of the emotions you feel, when things aren't met, you know what I'm saying? You got to embrace the imperfections that you have, and knowing that like not everything's going to be perfect, right? So when you're waiting to handle things for a perfect moment, or when you're more capable, or you can handle, you're not feeling a certain way, or it's just never it's never going to be a perfect moment. It's never going to happen. You just gotta have to kind of believe you're enough. You just gotta, yeah, believe you're enough. Believe that you're gonna be able to handle the things that you need and want, and even if sometimes things do stack up, just don't get overcomplicated with it. Take things one thing at a time. And there ain't no perfect thing to prioritize first, but you like I said, you don't want to be then empty. You don't want to then have all these things stacked up and make yourself feel like you have nothing to give, right? Part of accomplishing things in your life and getting through certain emotions, and doing certain getting embracing certain wants and needs, I think it's just like it just helps you become a complete person. And I think, man, you just don't want to be empty. I don't know how to explain that. You just don't want to be empty. And a lot of times, like when you prioritize yourself and you start to do maybe things that you want to do, like it kind of recharges you in a way. Like feeling good about completing things recharges you. I guess that's where I'm kind of leading. To feel like that complete person, you got to complete things in your life, and whether it's just those basic needs or it's some wants, anything that you prioritize, it just helps you become a complete person again. It's it's just always think, like I said, it's important to remember to put yourself first. At the end of the day, prioritizing yourself is putting yourself first. Not necessarily like forgetting about other people, right? And not being a selfish person about it, but that's an important thing. Putting yourself first, doing, what you want, taking care of your needs, having your priorities, always going first. Making sure that you are, okay with those, and that you have those things completed, and then that kind of helps you open up to helping others, but only when you're set, only when you make yourself right, only when the things in your life are complete. Yeah, I don't know if things are ever going to be complete in our lives, right? Every day, something more will come up, and something new that we want, or something that we need, or a new priority will come up. But never forget to prioritize yourself first, and take care of the things that you need and want, and take care of your priorities first. As I get older, I have a tendency to reminisce more and more about my childhood, as I think we all do, kind of. Most days I'll have these, random bits of memories that kind of play in my head. Some memories aren't always great or wanted, but when a good memory pops into my head, it makes me miss growing up a little bit. I don't I don't want to relive my childhood truly, but I do appreciate the parts of my childhood that I get to hold on to. Anywhere from personal memories, right? Or, things a little like, toys, movies, video games, even music. I love music. I love music, sorry. But admittingly, I have a tendency to kind of stick with certain songs or certain artists, certain albums, kind of just play those things on repeat. I almost every day listen to tons of songs that have ingrained themselves in my brain over the years as I've grown up. And I can't help but to jam to what I consider like my oldies, right? I mean, I'm not that old. I'm only, I was born in 96. I ain't that old. But I was kind of thinking about all the songs that I still listen to today, and kind of how long they've kind of been around, and I decided maybe it would be fun to try to form my own childhood playlist. I don't I was kind of iffy on this topic a little bit because of I don't know how much I'm just gonna talk about the songs. I didn't really write much down about them, but kind of more so I just wanted to walk down memory lane a bit. I picked 12 songs, and think these are kind of I don't these aren't the 12 definitive songs that define all my childhood. That's kind of the thing, is like there's a lot of songs. Tons of music, and there were ones that I kind of left off because I thought, 10 or 12 songs would have been perfect for this, this topic, this list. But in the future, there are definitely more songs that I can think of. But like I said, I didn't really have any other good idea. Like I'm not gonna sit here and sing these songs, and I don't plan on playing any clips of these music because that's copyright, and I don't want to mess with any of that. Any of that. But kind of, I listed them kind of in maybe importance. Maybe like kind of like. I started off with the most important, like the ones that I still listen to the most today, or maybe more so like the ones that mean the most, and then ended it on like ones that I like, but just kind of are more so in the back of my head. Nonetheless, they're all songs that I love. But the first song I had on there, also I probably just talk about maybe more so the memory I have of the song and like when it came to like my like radar, when it got on my radar, when I discovered the song, if I can remember. But the first song I have on here is a song I consider like my favorite song of all time. It's one of them. It's hard to say, but it's a song that reminds me of like my mom and just things like that, or just my childhood in general. It's By the Way by Red Hot Chili Peppers. The song came out in '02. It was June of '02. But I don't know if I don't obviously remember it specifically coming out, but I remember that on the radio. I remember every time that song would come on the radio, it was like, turn that thing up and just like blast it. And my mom liked Red Hot Chili Peppers, she still does, and she's always been funny with like she doesn't have any definitive taste in anything, but she likes a little of everything. So growing up, it was like, radio hits and, what was the next blockbuster movie. It was kind of like that's what her next thing that she liked or whatever, which is okay. That's fine. There's other things she had on her mind. But that song, just I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, I've listened to a lot of the Red Hot Chili Peppers as I growing up. And By the Way is just like my favorite probably out of all their songs, and it just reminds me of good times. I just, turning that song up and just blasting it, and I didn't know the song for a long time, and then I remember I was having a conversation with my mom, and she was like, "Yeah, what's the name of that song?" Da 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 da, and she like looked it up, and then or like like the next time I saw her, she had looked it up and told me. I just went home and I like listened to it a bunch of times, and I was like, "Man, this song is awesome, truly." But yeah, I said that's a good number one to start off with. Next on the list for number two, the number two song is "Hold On" by Good Charlotte. I laugh at Good Charlotte was like my first introduction into like pop punk kind of like that was like not maybe not my first, but grew up with a teenage sister, and for a certain period of my time, like for the first few years of my life, and so that was kind of I was inundated with all that type of music. But I remember so that song came out November of '03. I didn't get a specific date. Some of them don't have specific dates, just a month and a year. But November of '03. And I remember that song specifically, like I guess the next year I forget what the album was called, but I bought the album that song was on, and we were going me and my family were going on a vacation to Mount Rushmore. I think it was spring break of like '04. So the next year. And so I was 7 years old, and I remember we stopped to get like CD players, and we got to pick out a CD, and picked out that Good Charlotte album. And that song specifically, Hold On, was like the song. I love that song, and it's a song about suicide, and the music video has a couple like kind of sad testimonials from people, and it's a great song. It really hits hard. I want to sing it, but I don't want to embarrass myself on the podcast, so I'm not gonna sing it. I love that. But Good Charlotte was like my introduction into pop punk and kind of even like emo-ish and stuff like that, which took over my life for that time period all the way into like the mid and late 2000s. And then I just kind of stopped listening to music. Okay, but next song, number three on the list, I have is Peace Sells by Megadeth. That came out in November as well, but in 1986. I wasn't alive when that song came out, but I 100% remember it from my childhood. Growing up, my dad had a greatest hits. Megadeth CD still does, and Peace Cells, one of their greatest hits. And I love Megadeth is probably my favorite metal band. even though I don't agree with Dave Mustaine, their lead singer. I think he's a dick. I don't care. But Megadeth is good. They're angry, and that's the thing. That's what I liked as a kid. I was angry as a kid for a period of time, so I wanted that angry music. You know, I wanted the anger, and Megadeth delivers. And Peace Sells was a great song. It's kind of like an earlier Megadeth song. It feels like maybe. It kind of just goes along with that kind of darker, you know, Dave Mustaine's gragglier voice, and very much so like Megadeth is about that political, like they're very political, anti-establishment, anti-government type thing. And it's the perfect like it's kind of like just it's Dave Mustaine just woeing in misery. It's like, you know, what you don't believe you know, why do I pay my money when you know, why do you you know, suggest I'm this? Why am I this? Why, you know, why do you say I'm this? Da 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 da. Well, tell me how I'm supposed to be an American, how I'm supposed to be like it's a good song. And as a kid, as a angsty kid, I was like definitely into that. I don't think I remember necessarily specifically when I came across that song, but it was probably about that time, like 03, like when I was 7. Like it was like that's when a lot of my music like taste started coming. It was like 7, 8, 9, like that time period. But yeah, next on the list, number 4 on the list is Famous Last Words by My Chemical Romance. That came out in beginning of '07, January 22nd of '07. I imagine on that, you know, Welcome to the Black Parade album, which that album took over my life 100%. I think I still have it somewhere tucked away in some corner of somewhere. But that whole album, obviously having you know, Welcome to the Black Parade on there, but also like Teenagers, and it just had a couple good songs, including Famous Last Words. And I think like especially with like My Chemical Romance being kind of this like emo, you know, like loyal, you know, royalty in a way, like this kind of legacy and emo music they have is this album was a little different. It felt like the Welcome to Black Parade was a little more. It was experimenting with like maybe some arena rock and some like, you know, more riffs, and it wasn't like so like, you know, you know, crying into the microphone, which they never really were. They always kind of had some good like, you know, jams. But this one was really epic. Famous Last Words was so freaking epic, and I just remember like absolutely like loving that song and 100% like becoming like one of my favorite songs. And still to this day, I still jam it. I still jam all these songs, and that one sticks out to me specifically. I just love that whole vibe of that album, and the music video is you know, just they have like the band like kind of gear on, like the marching band gear. And I was excited when I heard they were kind of coming back around, but I haven't listened to anything new they've put out, or you know, I just say how old a certain time in my life when I was 11, and or I was 10 at the time, it's before I turned 11. But yeah, but next on the list is Pressure Point by the Zootons. This one's kind of a random one. I think this one's so funny. This one's the fifth one on my list, but it's this one I discovered this song off a video game. This one came out, it was early '04, but there was a video game called MVP '05 as MVP Baseball. And it was '05, 2005 was the year before that they switched to went from MLB to college baseball. They did like the '06 and '07 were college baseball games. But and the soundtrack on that game maybe necessarily wasn't like the most memorable. A lot of the songs I discovered as a kid were off of like gaming soundtracks, like sporting games, because I play a lot of sport games, Maddens and whatever, you know. But this song, Pressure Point, the Zootons, this was off of yeah, MVP '05, and I literally was just like one of the best things about old games, at least you know, as I remember them, is like in the options and like they had like special features or whatever that they would have like just behind the scenes stuff, or like they'd have like the soundtrack for the game or whatever, and they'd have maybe like a music video or something like that. And this game randomly had like in the special features it had the music video for Pressure Point, and this song was awesome. And I don't know any other Zooton song, and I think they worked with Mark Ronson. I think that was like, you know, his beginning of his career or whatever, if you know who Mark Ronson is. But this song's like awesome. It has this total vibe. It's kind of like a '70s kind of rocky vibe. It's kind of that's the Zootons vibe, and they have a saxophone player. I mean, like, come on. It's a good vibe and very cool. Like one of those songs that just kind of was that upper energy, something I really liked at the time. Like I liked kind of emo music though, but like I liked a lot of that like more upbeat like punk or like this one's not punk, it's like I said rock, but I like the upbeat stuff too. Next on the list, number 6, I think. Am I getting off track? I don't know. Next on the list is "Don't Fear the Reaper" by Blue Oyster Cult. This is a classic song. It came out in 1976, obviously way before, 20 years before I was born, almost exactly 20 years before I was born. But "Don't Fear the Reaper" is just I remember having a Blue Oyster Cult like greatest hit CD again. My dad had it, and Godzilla is probably the song I like most out of Blue Oyster Cult, but don't Fear the Reaper specifically, I remember most in like my childhood for some reason. Well, not for for a couple reasons. Um, me and my dad and my little sister and my Uncle Rowdy, my cousins Jess and Jen, all filmed a movie, like a random like, dude, it's so funny. It's just a random movie we filmed when we were like kids, like young, young, young. And the beginning of the movie is like a scene with my cousin Jessica, and it's like a theme song that we played as "Don't Fear the Reaper." And it will forever be stuck in my head because of that. Because not even because of that, and just because of like how ingrained it was in our childhood, and how we were so cool just knowing certain songs like that. And I thought it was so cool knowing like songs from the 70s and 80s, and it has helped shaped my like form in music now. Of course, it has, but it's a good song. I love that. I love that song, and I thought Blue Oyster Cult kind of had a better vibe than like I didn't want to hear like soft like Beatles type rock, even though the Beatles are good. But I like that upbeat. I like things like like Deep Purple or something like that. Like just bands that had a little more like edge to them. So good song. Don't Fear the Reaper is a great song. Next on the list, I have is Ohio is for Lovers by Hawthorne Heights. It came out middle of '05. Literally, I think peak like emo for me. I still think it's probably maybe my favorite emo song. Maybe I'm trying to think like yeah, I would say that's probably I there's a few like the used anything whatever yada yada yada. But Hawthorne Heights they took over my life, and I remember hearing one of their songs on a baseball game. I think it was MVP college baseball. It was '06, I think. And it was from that song I discovered more of Hawthorne Heights, and Ohio's for Lovers is like the one pinnacle like song for them. And as like a, Midwest kid that moved to the South, like I held on to that Midwesternness and myself. And so, I'm not from Ohio. I'm from Minnesota, but Ohio is for lovers. Like I love that. And it's literally it's like the most typical, emo song. One of the lines is, cut my wrist and black my eyes. It's like, come on. It's like until I fall asleep tonight. Sorry, that's all you get. Just a little of that. I can't stop laughing because these songs I still listen to. I'm laughing like I don't listen to them, but I'm still listening to them. And yes, I still feel shame. I don't care. But I'm gonna try to move on a little quicker to the last few. But next on the list is "Somewhere Only We Know" by Keen. Pretty sure that's how you say it. That came out in early '04. I forget the name of that album. My mom had that album. She like I said, she had random like taste in music, but that specifically was kind of her vibe. Like Coldplay, like epic pianos, great guitar playing, just good catchy lyrics, and "Somewhere Only We Know" is such a great song, and the music video is kind of a vibe, 100%. Them walking through like the forest and just on, dude. It's such a soft part of my memory, and a couple songs once in a while would pop in, and they weren't so harsh. They were a little softer. And this, like, I just remember that album. It had like horses on it, not like actually. It was like the like I don't know, but the album was blue. And "Somewhere Only We Know." I think that's like the one song I really remember from Keen. Next, well, like I said, try to move a little quicker. Next on the list is "Young Folks" by Pierre, Bjorn, and John. That came out in '06, which I thought it was like a little late, like earlier for some reason. I just remember it being like early in my life, but it was right before I turned 10 years old. So I guess that time period. But you could not turn on like VH1 or MTV like music videos without frickin' seeing young folks playing. It was like literally you'd be getting ready for school, just having it on the background, and then you'd hear that whistling, and you'd be like, oh, until it's a good song, and that whistling I still can't get down. I can't do because like I'm just not a good whistler. I can't wet my whistle that well. But it's they still play it. Literally was for this episode, like when I was like looking up like just songs. I saw like a performance from like a couple years ago, and I was like, they're still playing that song. It's still good. They still do it. It's a good song. Like I said, it's so recognizable from that whistle right off the bat. Next on the list, I gave up on the numbers. Next on the list is "Stay Together for the Kids," which is a Blink 182 song. That came out in early '02 ish. And that one I kind of remember. I don't think I remember specifically ever remember listening to it like specifically, but when I started like watching YouTube and they started doing like I just remember like music videos started popping up on YouTube and stuff like that. I remember watching that one, Stay Together for the Kids, and it was just kind of this big old like it was there an empty abandoned house, Blink 182, and it was just a different pace. It's when like Blink 182 went from pop punk kings in like the late 90s to switching to emo, doing like Missing You and Adam's Song, and just kind of switching into more like emo-y riffs. And something I think was better for them. I think it sounds better, and that song is my probably my favorite Blink 182 song, and just like absolutely epic. And as a kid of divorce, my parents split when I was young, and it just meant it meant something to me. Last two songs. Second to last out of the list is "The Ripper" by Judas Priest. This one came out in 1976. March of 1976, and this one's a kind of a random one. This one's another one of those really random kind of songs that popped up. But my dad had a girlfriend that made him like a big old burnt thing of CDs, and or it might have been his. He also had his brother made him like a big burnt thing of CDs, like or like but his wasn't as good. But one of the songs on there was "The Ripper" and by Judas Priest, and so I love Judas Priest. I thought a lot of their songs was good. The Green Man Unleashed is probably like another amazing song, but the Ripper it was about Jack the Ripper, and as a kid who was kind of into the morbid, like I'm always been into the morbidness, like true crime before true crime was like, well, and not because it's popular, because like I remember like 60 Minutes and television was very popular at that time when I was growing up, was like true crime stuff, and my mom read like Sue Grafton books and like James Patterson books, so like I was around the true crime. I ain't escaped that. So like but then like me and my little sister got interested in like murderers, like so and then Jack the Ripper was one of our favorites. And this song is just it's just an awesome like early metal song, kind of 1976 is kind of crazy, but it's just it's a good song, and it's kind of got that creepy eerie vibe to it, and I still listen to it till this day. Not as much as like Green Man Unleashed or Painkiller or something like that, but still a good song. But lastly, on the list, 12 songs, like I said, just these 12 songs, is Over My Head, Cable Car by The Fray. This one came out in late '05, October of '05. And The Fray just took over for a second. The most famous one they had was like How to Save a Life, which was a little like after this or whatever, but Over My Head was like I remember the music video and thought it was kind of cool, and just thinking about, kid who didn't fit in, that's how I felt. So I definitely vibe with the music video, and that song was just epic, and anything with piano, took over in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. You had a little piano and their epic lyrics, feeling lost and, it's, exploring yourself. I'm sold. I'm there. I'm listening to that. But yeah, okay. That's it really. Like I said, I have more songs that I have like written down. I can always come up with more songs, and there's some that I feel not more embarrassed by, but they're just so more niche and just not into like necessarily what music I'm into now or what I would come into. But I love reminiscing on like old music and old movies, and reminiscing on my childhood in general. And I would like to know some of y'all's favorite songs of the year, some songs that you grew up listening to as a kid that you still jam to till this day. Humans, as we know, have evolved from once being ancient primates. Over the span of a million years, ancient hominids transformed into the Homo sapiens we are today. As we have discovered through research spanning decades and decades, the world changing around these living beings have had a direct effect on their development, on our development as a human race in general. I read an article recently that was pointing out some research that was done to take an attempt at discovering kind of language evolution from like, basic vowels and, consonant sounds to something more advanced. Specifically saying that maybe it's because of a changing climate and environment. And I thought it was cool. This art, I wish I would have wrote down the source, but this article was just talking about how because of like the transforming of the world and because of how things change and how the landscape changed for certain groups of these ancient hominids, that they may have developed a language to help out with that. And it's just over millions of years. Like just thinking how crazy things have developed, not only as like in the physical traits we have in the way we function, but you don't think necessarily about language, about the patterns we've kind of developed and how everybody speaks differently around the world, right? It's pretty amazing. And it said like if from like between like 5.3 million and 16 million years ago in the Miocene era, I think there was a transformation of dense forest to open plains. Not everywhere, but in a lot of these the areas, all of a sudden there was once, where it was more close knitted, close trees together. There was more close groups of these primates, these ancient peoples. Eventually became more spaced out, and there became these open plains in between. And previously, we assume that primates. I mean, I think it's well said that and well documented that, or at least researched. You can't document it because it's millions of years ago, but we lived in treetops prior to the change in climate. But it led to kind of like wide open grasslands. But living in these treetops allowed this kind of closeness. It's kind of the close knit communities as we still have kind of today is this close knit communities, right? We still do this kind of stuff. When these ancient hominids living primarily in trees, they eventually kind of move onto the ground because there was no point. You're too far away. So you have to meet up with other primates, other ancient hominids on the ground. So the article was talking about kind of that it kind of maybe prompted the hominids to develop language a little bit differently. Originally, it was kind of more so maybe a vowel based kind of, calls where it was just like, grunts or something like that and just like things that don't take a lot of like, moving of your lips and a lot of mouth contortion to those like consonant based calls, like hisses and squeaks and stuff like that. Really basic and kind of funny to think like you don't think about maybe just that basicness of language, especially like how far we've come, but it had to start somewhere just as like babies, I guess, right? We see babies and they start just making sounds, right? And they start developing their own way of speaking. It takes time. The researchers that were referred in this article, believe development occurred so hominids could communicate in open spaces that because of the physical distance between them was greater that there was a need to somehow have like sounds that carried further so that they can call out to each other and they didn't have to be as like, at one time being in the trees when it was more dense, being able to like be more discreet, they needed to have things that carried. And there's findings that were like there was some findings that were significant because most modern languages have a pretty like, heavy consonant to vowel ratio now. So it kind of makes you think where that development came from. Why do we have a lot more consonants than vowels? Why does it sound this way? And it as we can see in our own day to day life that our speaking carries. Like you can talk to someone across the room or shout something from the other side of the house, type thing. But this woman named Charlotte Gannon, sorry, PhD candidate at the University of Warwick's Department of Psychology, and then one of the lead authors of the paper as well. They yeah, they studied for 2 years. Yeah, okay, sorry, I'm just confusing myself. They studied two types of orangutan calls. That was kind of how they based all their research off of that. And the University of Warwick is in Coventry, England, I think. Yeah. And yeah, her and other researchers. Sorry, I just like confused myself. Sorry. But they studied two types of orangutan calls. They placed them in a place similar to the landscape in which hominids would have lived during that kind of time of language development, right? When things were going from forests to the more open grasslands. So they saw that like the first call they tried was more of a kiss squeak kind of thing, which is known as a proto consonant. It's more, it involves making a sound by closing their mouth and using their lips, jaws, and like tongue, activating the whole mouth. And then the second call was more of like a grunt, a grumph, known as a proto vowel. It's made without like any manipulation, just like an open mouth, don't have to do anything. And the orangutans were chosen for the study because they believe that was kind of like the only arboreal great ape, like the one kind of most related to early primates. And also still, or more so, I guess, arboreal meaning still living in trees. Sorry. By playing the sound, so in an open landscape, they found that the consonants traveled much farther than the vowels, which I thought was kind of crazy. And like I said, maybe when you think about your own kind of speaking and how you speak as a person, it kind of makes sense. But kind of, I guess, like it kind of makes sense. Um, they found, yeah, it travels much further than the vowels. Surprised by the findings because consonants are formed at like a higher frequency, and sometimes higher frequencies things are like less heard. Things at high frequencies are not heard by everybody. And sound propagation would typically mean that lower frequencies travel farther. That just like hollering, you don't have to like, move your lips or move your tongue much, but just like shouting, hollering is best suited. But in the case of like the grumps and the kiss squeaking stuff, like when it comes to more of those kind of calls that orangutans do, the latter traveled farther, which was surprising. It said that vowel-based calls significantly less audible after a distance of 125 meters, or about 410 feet. And then consonant-based calls exhibited a moderate decrease in audibility after 250 meters, so a whole double amount, 820 feet. So that's kind of amazing. And especially when fewer than 20% of vowel-based calls were audible at 400 meters, compared to approximately 80% of consonants-based calls. So I think specifically with these kind of calls that they're referring to, but that's pretty amazing. That's twice as far. That's twice the distance. And I guess, like I said, never thought about like how far modern languages kind of come, from millions of years ago. And it's even hard to kind of contemplate millions of years ago people living on this earth and like how people lived or and grew into how we are today. And obviously modern language still had millions of years after the Miocene era to get into its current form, right? Like where we started developing like, specific languages and specific like, patterns of speech and like, rhythms and speech. That's what I was kind of really trying to say. But specifically, this kind of article was amazing, and thinking that this was kind of this around this time was a pivotal turning point in language development for humans. Homo sapiens is the only one to emerge with a rich spoken language out of all kind of prehistoric humans or ancient hominids. So it's kind of just amazing to think about, why. And there's other theories about like how language developed, and I like that. It just shows you a little bit how deeply connected everybody is in a weird way. And it just shows you how things kind of spread and how crazy that is. And maybe the ecological landscape that we experienced at the time had a really profound impact on the emerging language that we ended up with, right? That it is kind of interesting to think not just in just general like, evolution of humans and what does that even entail, but maybe it entails like obviously with changing landscape and changing climates a need for that kind of stuff, a change in food sources and change in communication ways, which I had never thought about. But I thought it was kind of cool to just ponder a little bit with this article just got me thinking further about kind of the primitive development of language and just how far we've really come as human beings. We are officially at the end of 2023. The day that this podcast is coming up will be on the 31st, so literally the last day of 2023. And I hope that for some people it was a good year. I hope for everybody it was a good year. But obviously it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but no matter what happened, I hope you made it through, and going into 2024 you can feel like you did a couple good things. Typically around like coming to the end of one year, going into the next year, there's kind of like a fresh mindset I think a lot of people have, and especially kind of I try to have. I don't think you need the new year necessarily to like have a fresh mindset or like want to start things in your life, but there's typically kind of like this in a way a tradition, a kind of having like the new year's resolutions that every year you have maybe a list of goals that you want to try to achieve throughout 2024. And I'm not really I'm big on like I mean, if you have goals and resolutions, that's cool. But I'm not always big on necessarily New Year's resolutions. Like I said, you don't necessarily need the new year to start things. I have a hard time sometimes thinking like there should be a perfect moment for something to start. But in reality, it's just not. But I was just, I wanted to have like I wanted to start doing more topics where I'm a little more free formed, where I don't have things written down. So this is kind of one of those topics. I was kind of just thinking about like my New Year's resolutions. I don't know how deep. I mean, like I don't know how deep everything's gonna be, like or how deep the stuff I want is, but I know that there's a couple things that I've kind of thought of, not only in like my own personal life, but or in my personal life, not just like in my personal goals, like improving my betterment as a person, like physically or emotionally, but to my life in general, and hopefully, the people around me. The My goal for 2024 really, like I think the big overlining goal is to find sort of some sort of success in this whole creative adventure that I'm on. I know that it takes time, and it takes years sometimes for people, and you never know like what's gonna happen. I think a lot of the uncertainty is it's like what scares me most. I think I kind of sit here and I kind of freak out on just thinking about like putting a goal up or having a resolution, and then just letting myself down. But I'm gonna give myself like I just like have this weird thing where I just don't want to quit doing this creative thing. And I know a lot of times with like of creative people, there's a when you're not producing something creative or you're not doing the things that you want, you feel like you've given up or something like that, or you feel really bad about that. And I just want to avoid that. I just have like a big picture that I can do something with this. Not just podcasting. The podcast is something that I like doing, but it's not. One day it probably won't be as relevant, and I just want to be able to do things to where I expand myself in a more broader sense, and I have things that I want to do, and I want to write, and I want to do some art, and I want to make movies, and or at least film. Like I don't have to make big blockbuster movies, but maybe one day. But that takes time, and especially if I'm sitting here and I'm not doing any of it, then it's not going to happen. But I think mostly I just want to try to find a consistent kind of pattern with like my content, and find a way that I'm making like trying to make the podcast to where I can get ahead of the podcast, and I can record ahead, and I kind of just have time to upload it when I have the ability to just upload it when it comes time to upload, and I have time to focus on other things. And I realize that I kind of have to put my face out there too, and I think that's kind of another goal is just putting myself out there more in that way. Right now, the podcast is kind of just like a blank like slate in a way that like just like a thing that is put out, and nobody really knows who it's by. And people who follow me, and you listeners, people are listening, you know me, or at least you know who I am by my name. But or you know me personally, but it's just one of the things like that may not reach a lot of people because it's just a faceless thing. So I have to kind of come to that realization that I need to put myself out there, not just for podcast sake or for, content sake, but for my betterment of my soul. I'm a pretty recluse type person. I really am. I really keep to myself, and I like to keep to myself, and I kind of sit in my own little world, and I don't do much, and At times I can find enjoyment in it and I can find content in it, but I'm not necessarily truly happy. Like I want people in my life for sure. Friends, a couple friends. I don't need a lot of friends. I would like to start getting back. I mean, like I haven't dated in a while. I would like get on that. But I gotta get over myself first. I think that's like a big thing, and I'm doing better. I really am. I'm not. I mean, like I don't. I'm never gonna be great. I'm never gonna be better necessarily, but I've learned a lot, and I realize a lot more about this world. And as I've kind of come into just like realization, I'm not as bad as I think I am, and I think we live in a little bit of going a little tangent here, but live a little bit in a world where I think people come up to you when they introduce themselves to you. They lead off with like, "Oh, I'm, depressed, I have anxiety, I'm got this mental illness, this bad thing happened to me or whatever." And that's just a weird thing. I don't ever want to be known for that stuff. It's never gonna leave me. I'm always gonna have a part of me, and I mean, I was diagnosed with it, and it's never gonna leave me. But I don't want that to be the how people see me. I want to be known as a fixture of like of hope, and I don't ever want to be seen as fake where I'm like hiding these things because I'm not. And the way that I do things and the way that I act, you'll see how I am. You'll see how my mind works. And I want to just try to be more open with that in general. Be more open as a person. With the dating thing, I think it's funny. It's like I want to get into the dating scene, whatever that means. But I mean, I'm just gonna fall in love with the first girl. It's just gonna happen. It's just how my mind is. So I don't know what scene I'm gonna get into. But a lot of like more, I guess more personally like oriented goals. Like I'd like to get more into I've been trying to exercise. I just don't do much. Like I have like weights that I like do full reps here and there, and just I don't do anything. So, but I'd like to get more into like trying to find out ways to. I like exercising in my room. I don't mind fucking around with the dumbbells. Excuse my language, but I'd like to go. I want to get to golfing more this year, so I'm getting outside with the golf. Like that's good exercise. I could hit 100 balls and feel like I broke a sweat. You know what I'm saying? Or play like 18 holes and feel like I'm doing something. I mean, I'd have to walk them if I felt like I really wanted to get into the exercising mindset of golf. But like just trying to better myself in that way, and I'm always going to continue with the mental health stuff, so that's going to be on my list for the futures to come. So every year to come. But I'm getting this will be the year I turn 28. And my 10-year high school reunion is also coming up this summer. So like I just blew my mind saying that. Shit. I just like I'm getting there. I'm almost I'll be 28 this year, and next thing I'll know I'll be at 29, then I'll be 30, and I just feel like I'm not I'm getting over the mindset that like I should have been in a different place. I'm getting over that mindset, and I'm kind of putting myself into the mindset that if I sit down and I really put my head down and I do these things that I want to do with my content and find a way to make some money, and if that means I have to put up like a PayPal and get a couple generous donations every once in a while, then I will. Like I don't want to do that because I don't want handouts. So trying to avoid that. I want real money. I don't want fake money. I don't want short-term money. I want long money. But I just think that it'll if I sit down and I do my due diligence for all this stuff, that my life will then just like open. And then all this stuff that I want, like, a house, or I want to have kids and I want to be married, and yeah, but I'm not doing anything for that stuff. But if I set my head down and I get myself right, that stuff is just gonna fall into place, and it feel like it feels like it'll just be quick. Like it'll just be like dominoes. Like I just think, I have that hope. It's the first time I've ever had that kind of hope, So it's different. I have to flip the whole mindset, gotta flip the whole thing. But yeah, how long I've been talking? About 10 minutes on this. Maybe I'll go a couple more minutes. Sorry. Like I said, I'm trying to do a little more free form, a little more free form. I think I like putting myself out in the world a little more. Like that's a big thing too. Like when it's just like going and like just like going and doing things I want to have fun doing, like going and shopping, even if I'm not buying anything, or watching movies. I used to watch movies by myself all the time in the theaters, but I just like don't do that anymore for no reason. Well, not as many good movies to be honest. But I just don't do that stuff, and like I don't go hang out with like my older sister as much as I should, and like I hang out with my little sister sometimes, but it's not as frequently as I could, and I can hang out with certain family members more, but I just don't always have like that energy, and I don't always want to be seen by people. But Like, if I do it like once a week, I hang out with one person this week and hang out with one person this week, I ain't tough. And maybe builds my confidence in general. And like, and putting myself out in public makes me feel more comfortable to be seen. I just don't like to be seen. That's like my big thing. That's why I don't post on social media and I don't post pictures and I don't have like more personal like video content of myself. Like, but that's changing. We're coming to 2024. This, it's a nice even year. 2023, ew, that's uneven. 2024, that's even. That's an even number. But I hope 2024 is great for everybody. And I'm gonna try to make it great. And if I know that if I put my head down and I start and I just figure things out, and I take the beginning part. And I'm not gonna say that the beginning part of the year is the only time I have, right? It's just like things will fall into place once I start to put things together. They'll fall into place. I know they will. I just have to form my mindset. And I think everybody should have that same mindset that you got to put your head down to do things. Things take effort. Things are going to push against you. You're going to have to push against some adversities, right? So let's all take advantage of 2024. 2023 is now behind us. And, live it up for tonight. Let's say for tonight, let's just not think about it. Party tonight, New Year's Eve party, and then have a good New Year's Day. Get over the hangover, make yourself, eat some soup or drink some soup, however you feel about soup, you eat it or drink it, and just have a good day. Call it to work. Call tonight, call right now when you're listening, call right now. I'll wait. Okay, I can't wait anymore, but call. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, I hope everybody has an amazing 2024 because I plan on having an amazing 2024 and I just 2024 is going to be everybody's year, I promise. Alrighty, friends. That's really all I have to say about that. Thank you for tuning in to episode 39. I always appreciate everybody for stopping by. If you want to listen to this episode or any of my other past episodes or future episodes, I always make sure to post them on YouTube or Spotify, both. If you find anything I say enjoyable or relatable in any way, then I always appreciate a little support. You could subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, follow me on Spotify. You can also follow me on a bunch of different social medias. I have Instagram. I also have Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter, mostly on Instagram and Facebook. I'll make sure to link all those in my video description below, as well as like the channel description. Any links to it always be in the bios of anything. I'll try to do my best to do that. But I love everybody. I always appreciate the chance to get on the microphone and talk to y'all. And I'm gonna take a couple, maybe a couple weeks to figure out what I'm doing for the future of the podcast, and just make sure that I'm starting off the year right and making sure I'm doing my due diligence. And have a happy 2024, everybody. Whatever y'all are doing tonight, whatever shenanigans you get into, just be safe and get home safe, okay? But nonetheless, I love y'all. Make sure to tell someone that you love them as well. Make sure to show up for yourselves every single day and be excellent to each other.